Good.
And let me introduce again Joel Custer. Joel is the uh, grandson of Willard Custer, and he's going to give us all the information you've ever wanted to know about the Custer Channel Wing aircraft and things that are happening in the future. So, Joel, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Paul. Thanks for the introduction. Thanks for inviting me to be here. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. I must say that I am a little intimidated talking to all of the docents because you guys are the experts on aviation history. And we were just talking about how some of you even have heard my uncle speak in years past, and he was evidently doing somewhat of a lecture circuit. And so, if anything I say today is different from what he said, then he was right. So, um, so uh, I have I did retire about 2 years ago and wrote a book about my grandfather and his channel wing aircraft called The Speed of Air. And it is not a memoir because most of what happened, all the good stuff, long before I was born. But um, but I did have a chance over the last 30 years to do a lot of research part-time, of course, over and above my day job on the channel wing and its history. So since my uncle has passed away, I think the mantle has kind of fallen to me, so that I am now the surviving expert on the channel wing story. Hopefully, based on my 30 years of research, reflected in 13 pages of bibliographic entries in the back of the book. Hopefully, I'm somewhat of an expert, but you guys are the experts of the larger aviation story. So, if you have any questions for me, I would love to know what they are. So, please do put them in the chat, and I promise I will leave some time at the end to address those. Um, I also want to mention that I am not an aeronautical engineer, I'm not a pilot. Um, I've always had my feet on the ground as far as a career goes. But because every time we talk about the channel wing, engineering questions come up, I knew that I had to engage an aeronautical engineer for the book so that I have something in there that appeals to the aeronautical engineers. And so I contacted Bob Engler, and he was a former research engineer with Georgia Tech Research Institute, had 44 years of research experience, and was a channel wing expert. And so I asked him if he would join me and at least write the foreword to my book. And he said, well, he would write the foreword if I would allow him to write the afterword also. So I said, sure, because he had a better idea of the next steps. And so we had a very good working relationship. Unfortunately for me, he did not survive the COVID pandemic. So he never did get to see the published version. But the forward and the afterword are his. They're his words, his graphics, and everything. And they are actually copyrighted in his name. So they do live on in that book. I wish he was here to join me. And I'm sure he would add a lot. So my goal for today is to give you some information about the channel wing that you may or may not have had before, as well as some stories that you might remember if a visitor to the museum ever asks you about the channel wing. And I'm surprised at how many people are still interested in it. Um, and I had a nephew who visited Udvar-Hazy after my book came out, and he wanted to see the model in the display case over at Hazy and was never able to find it. So, hopefully, as a result of this talk, some of you will become more interested in the aircraft itself, look up exactly where is that model so that if anybody asks, it's not in a high traffic area. So if anybody asks where it is, you'll know exactly where to point them to and you'll have a story about it. as you go along. So that's my goal. Um, Let me see how well this works. Bear with me here. Here we go. So the Smithsonian, as you probably know, has two artifacts from Willard's Channel Wing career. The first is the CCW-1, Custer Channel Wing, number one. And the that second artifact the Smithsonian has is a model of 57 Charlie, which is the Custer Channel Wing 5. Now the naming scheme changed. So CCW1 was the first. CCW5 was not the first, but the 5 refers to the number of people that will sit in the cabin. So before I get into these, though, I wanted to spend a little time talking about Willard himself, his background, and a little bit about his personality. So, so let's go back about 100 years to 1925, just over 100 years ago, and we'll find Willard as he looks in this picture on the left. The picture on the right is him about 20 years later in his 40s. So he went blonde early in his life. But let's focus first on him on the left. So he was born in 1899. So whatever the year is, it's easy to figure out how old he is. So in 1925, he is 26 years old. Um, Glenn Curtis has recently retired to Florida. And it'll be 2 more years before Lindbergh flies from New York to Paris. So that'll kind of sit you in the timeline here. So he's 26 years old and married. He has 3 children. The fourth is going to come along in 3 more years, and that'll be my father. So he lives in Hagerstown, Maryland. He owns a house there on the west side, and he will live in that house his entire life. And 60 years after this, he will die there. So he is a mechanic with the Ford Motor Company in Hagerstown. He's working on cars, he's in the garage. And sometimes he has to go off site to help with any Ford Motor Company product. Could be a car, could be a tractor, what have you. Now, he is a mechanic at 26. He had to leave high school in order to go to work. So he grew up in Martinsburg, West Virginia. His father is working at the roundhouse there on um, on train engines. And he is a mechanic himself. And so he teaches Willard to make whatever it is that he needs. So they're both very good with their hands. Like Curtis, however, who only had an eighth grade education, Willard left high school before he graduated, and he is a wizard with combustible engines, all things mechanical. So he also loves airplanes, but not to fly. So he's fascinated by how they work, by the mechanical engineering. So when he was born in 1899, the Wright brothers had not yet flown. So he was about 3 or 4 when the Wright brothers flew. And as he grows up, uh, he reads about all of the biplanes in World War One. Thankfully, he's too young to enlist. But they come home, they're barnstormers and things like that. And he's just fascinated by the mechanical engineering that's involved in these things. In terms of his personality, he is an extrovert. He is outgoing. He's affable, self-confident. He has a very loud, explosive laugh. If he's in the room with other people, you'll get to hear it. And he gathers around other people in order to rest. So that's where he gets recharged. He is a natural salesman. In fact, in a couple years, he is going to transition from the Ford garage into the sales room. And this will be right before the Great Depression hits. and he will be able to sell enough cars through his talent and skill, even during the Depression, so that he will do well financially. Now, his channel wing career starts at this age when he's about 26. And his after he gets started, especially after he goes full time, his personality is going to become a little more complicated. People will tell him that he's crazy, and these are family members will seriously tell him that there's something wrong, that he's being irresponsible, and this isn't how you take care of your family. And so part of his motivation for living becomes he simply wants to prove them wrong. He will become defensive about his lack of education, especially when the patent engineers that he has to deal with begin to dismiss him just because he doesn't know anything. And he will begin to dismiss them as the boys with all the education. So he becomes defensive about that. And then at least one person will try to steal his patent and or steal his idea and patent it under his own name. And so he becomes almost paranoid now. Um, and just remember, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean that they're not out to get you. So he becomes a little suspicious of strangers and their intent. He wonders what their agenda is when they come knocking at his door. So he's in a strange situation after he goes full time. He's defending his idea to critics. At the same time, he's promoting them to the public and to the government, but he's trying to hide them from thieves and competitors. So he's in an interesting situation. So I want to talk now a little bit about what it is that, what exactly his concept is that led him to create the channel wing. Give you a little introduction there, just very briefly. Um, in the summer of 25, remember we're still there, he begins his career when he is outside working on a tractor. And a thunderstorm overtakes him by surprise and he runs into a barn. And while he's in the barn for refuge from the storm, the roof suddenly pops off. And knowing something about how airplanes work already, um, even after a, an experience like this that would probably chill you to your bones, he's grappling with a mechanical question in his mind. And that is, how can a roof that is not designed to fly, how can it lift off without running down a runway when an airplane that is designed to fly cannot do that? So what he knows about lift is what you see in the graphic on the left, that you have a cross section that is moving forward, creating two streams of air, one above it and one below it. The one above it is traveling faster than the airstream below it. And so you get a corresponding difference in air pressure. A higher air pressure at the bottom then becomes eventually great enough, given the right conditions, to lift the wing into the air. And Willard reasons in the right graphic that this is the same kind of thing that happened to the barn roof, but it's simpler now because you don't have two streams of air, you only have the one. And that is the storm winds that are going over the barn roof. Inside the barn, the air is stationary. So it still retains its higher pressure, but as the air speeds and blows faster across the top of the roof, that lowers the air pressure above it. And so, in his way of thinking, the barn roof has simply just popped off of the barn. Um, he will refine this idea into a simple demo that helps even a child get the idea. And I want to play it for you because I'm a keep it simple type person. And I'm writing a young reader's version of the book right now. So I'm thinking kind of simple, but this video that a friend of mine did for me we'll show you that demonstration.
Hi, Joel. Garen Martins. Uh, Wanted to show you how to fly a screwdriver. There's one thing to look at on a screwdriver. You see that this one has kind of a rounded top and this one has more of a flat top. The flat top screwdrivers fly a lot easier than a round top screwdriver. And all you need is an air hose with a blowgun, and then you point it upward across the top of the screwdriver, and I'll show you. And sometimes you have to change your angle a little bit as to how much air uh, lowers the pressure across the top of the screwdriver. So here we go. That's how your grandpa taught it to me. Fly the screwdriver and put it in your pocket. I've done that many, many times, and to friends and grandkids and that kind of stuff, and they're always amazed. Best wishes to you.
He's a great guy. So, the demonstration of the flying screwdriver is something that's pictured here. You can see Willard doing it himself. Um, so this was just to show that you can lower the air pressure above the surface, any surface. And if the conditions are right, you can make it rise simply because of that. Next, he will look for a way to apply this to an airplane. So Willard reframes the problem. Um, it's the problem of how to create lift. It's not, um, well, it's simply how can you control the air to get it to blow over the wing the way you want it to, when you want it to, as fast as you want it to go. And so this brings us to Willard's research method. Let me talk a little bit about that. Now, remember, he doesn't have any book knowledge. He doesn't know any laws of thermodynamics or fluid dynamics. He doesn't know any algebra or trigonometry, never heard of a slide rule or a Bernoulli's principle. He has no electronic calculators, any such thing. His research method is simply this, and this is what works on the farm. You try different ideas until you find the one that works best or seems most promising, and you go with that. So this is a little cartoon that I did that shows how he imagines he might be able to use a propeller to move the air. So he has a propeller already because he has an airplane. So he could use that to move the air. And what he doesn't know is how can he control the air going into and out of the propeller's airstream? So it's an experiment. It's a place to start. He encases it in a box, two sides of plywood mounted to the floor. The engine is mounted to the floor. The propeller is inside of what's basically a trough. He has no hypothesis. This is a practical discovery. I wonder what will happen if. He doesn't know what's going to happen. So, and that's a little dangerous. But at first, when he turns on the propeller, nothing happens. But eventually, he speeds it up fast enough that the high speed airstream inside that trough creates a low pressure pocket that is so low the air outside the trough collapses the sides inward in toward the propeller. And worse, the windows of the room also implode. So you see there the shards of glass on the floor. Even the atmospheric pressure outside the building gets into the act. So he's excited. This works pretty well. And so he builds his first model. And if you see here on the top left, he's got a fuselage in the middle and then the two wings and on each side of the fuselage. But the propeller is behind the wing and pointed forward, and the propeller sits in a box. There's the fuselage on one side, and then there's a fin on the other, the wing on the bottom. So he's reproducing the conditions that in his experiment, succeeded in creating a pocket of low pressure. And he puts it on both sides of this model. Here's another side, another picture. It's a little bit better, top right. That's him standing there with it. And then the bottom left, or bottom right, sorry, is taken from a film. It's a frame from a motion picture. This shows the model hovering above the table. Now, it has gone straight up with no forward motion because the tail is tied to something. And it would slap into the ceiling, except he's got a leash on it. But under those conditions, it shows vertical takeoff, and that's all he needed to see. This was enough to him to prove that his idea worked. And later on, in 1951, he will repeat this demonstration with a full-size aircraft in Pittsburgh. So now that we know this and kind of where the channel comes from and how it is working, we can talk about the CCW1. This is a picture of it hanging at Garber. I understand it's not hanging anymore, but let's talk about that. So this is the first full-size channel wing aircraft that Willard built. Direct your attention here on this slide to the photo on the left. This is taken in Willard's backyard workshop. Willard is on the left, and on the right is Frank Kelly. Kelly is Willard's first business partner and is a professional aviation photographer in his own business. So he's probably responsible for most of the photos you see in this presentation. You'll hear his name again in 2 slides. But the man in the middle is the one I want to tell you about. This is Dr. Lewis Crook. He has a PhD in math and physics. Not only is he a professor of theoretical and applied mechanics, he is also the dean of the Department of Aeronautical Engineering at Catholic University in Washington, D.C. Now, CU doesn't have an aeronautical engineering department anymore, but they did back then. In fact, they had a wind tunnel on their campus. It was one of the first universities in the U.S. to have a wind tunnel on its campus. It was built and functioning in 1901. So that's 2 years before the Wright brothers flew. So Crook also has wind tunnels on his personal property in Cabin John, Maryland, that he uses on a contract basis. And this is how he has come to know Willard. He has seen the film of Willard's model going straight up off the table. And so he's very interested in testing Willard's idea. So Willard provides him with some channel wing models made of wood, of course, and Dr. Crook makes some of his own, so that by the time he's finished testing models, he'll say that he has tested hundreds of them. Now, eventually he comes to the end of models. He says models is one thing, but what we need now is a full-size aircraft to do more testing. Willard has a corporate sponsor for the moment who is paying Dr. Crook for his services on Willard's behalf. And so this sponsor antes up the cash, and Dr. Crook then provides Willard with the specs for a full-size channel wing. And Willard sets about to build her in his workshop. If you look at the photo on the top right, this is not of the CCW1, but I included it so that you could see that in building a channel, the shape of the wing itself. So at any particular point in these ribs, you'll see that the rib itself is an airfoil shape. So the wing of the channel wing is still shaped like an airfoil, even though it's bent into a half circle. That's what that is to show you. Now, the picture on the bottom is the CCW1 in progress. And this is Willard in Willard's shop, and he is making it out of wood. You'll see the fuselage there with one chair sitting in it. And to to the side is one channel. It looks like it's made of one piece of wood, but and it probably is, or plywood, something like that. He has had it bent, and it is in an airfoil shape. Um, you also see the engine is suspended there in the middle, and even the propellers. Willard has made the propellers by hand himself. So, what impresses me the most about Dr. Crook is his intellectual humility. So, Willard and Dr. Crook have formed a close working relationship of mutual respect. And given that Willard has no educational credentials and Dr. Crook is the dean of a college department, they still have a relationship of mutual respect. And this is so different from what Willard got from the patent engineers that it's remarkable to me that they were able to hit it off so well. So, Dr. Crook becomes the first of several aeronautical engineers to study the channel wing over Willard's career. And they start out very skeptical, but as they study and test it and work with it, they become converts and stalwart supporters and proponents. And Dr. Crook is one of those. And Willard will, in his career, he will have issued to him 26 channel wing patents, right? Only one ever has a co-inventor. And on that one, the co-inventor is Dr. Crook. So by 1942, it's finished. And these are pictures of it. The one on the left is, hang on one second. If these are a little bit hard to see, but if you are able to see it closely enough, the propeller is about halfway up the channel in this shot, and it is in fact movable in order to test performance characteristics under different configurations. So they want to be able to put that propeller at different spots and see what difference that makes. The stabilizers are also modifiable. There's at least two different configurations for that. In fact, the entire plane is modular. You can assemble it and disassemble it pretty easily. And so they disassemble it, put it on a truck, take it to the airfield for testing, put it together. They have to take their own gas in. They do their testing, then they take it apart, put it back on the truck, and bring it home. She doesn't look very pretty. She's not sleek, not very aerodynamic looking. In fact, the odd shape will bring a lot of skepticism and criticism. Now, by chance, Frank Kelly at this time is leafing through a magazine and he finds an advertisement that includes the write-up here on the left. And it resonated with Frank, who tore it out and wrote across the bottom of the page, Channel Wing does the same. So thereafter, the CCW1 became affectionately known as the Bumblebee. The top two photos here are still shots taken from films of the Bumblebee's trial flights. Now, during World War II, there were flying restrictions, especially around Washington, D.C., and this is from a secret airfield near Washington, D.C. She was allowed to fly only so high, and so she flew extended hops. And after all the testing, which was planned, overseen, and documented by Dr. Crook, and some of his reports are in the Smithsonian Library, he came to the following conclusion, as you see here. It was fully proved that the channel wing ship would easily clear a 50-foot obstacle within a 50-foot takeoff run. He also pointed out that cross breezes had no effect on her performance. Now, Bob Engler said to me on the phone once, we were talking about this, he says, "Do you know how incredible that is?" And I said, "No, give me a comparison." So his comparison was the twin engine Cessna 310, which is pictured here. He says It's heavier, but it has um, more lift square footage, more wing square footage for lift, and so he says this requires a 1,500-foot takeoff to clear a 50-foot obstacle. So, according to Engler, the next successful powered lift aircraft in history to incorporate a vertical lift component will have a tilt prop and a tilt wing, but it will not fly until 1964. So, based on the Bumblebee's performance in the year she first flew, which was 1942, Engler says Willard was way ahead of his competitors and easily qualifies as the father of powered lift. So that is the significance of this artifact. Um, you'll see here that she appeared on Popular Mechanics magazine, an artist version of what it might have looked like if she had been allowed to fly that high. So Willard donated her to the Smithsonian in 1961. And from what I understand, she's still there at the Garber facility. So maybe someday she'll be on display, but probably not. At least you know she's there. And if people come looking for you, you'll know a story or two about her. I want to switch now to the second artifact that the Smithsonian holds. This is a Udvar-Hazy, a model of the CCW5. Pictured here on the right is yours truly, standing by the display case at Hazy. It's a 1/40th scale model of the CCW5, also donated by Willard. Yeah, so if you can tell from what else is in this display case exactly where the case is, then you'll know next time somebody comes looking. Know where to point them to. Now, first I want to talk to you about the model itself because it's kind of a TV star. And then I'll talk to you about the CCW5. This is a picture of the model as it appeared on television. Back in the 60s, before color TV, there was a show called I've Got a Secret, and some of you maybe are contemporaries of mine, and you'll remember it. So on this show, there were TV and movie stars, a panel of them, that would ask the guest of the night questions. They had to be yes/no questions. And they would ask him questions to see if they could guess what his secret was. And Willard was on. And in order to help explain how his airplane worked, they had the model there on TV. And I want to go so far as to show you the clip. It's only about a minute and a half, but it's good because you'll get to hear Willard himself, who's there on the right, hear him explain how his channel wing works.
Here, as we show this to our viewers, Mr. Custer, would you demonstrate the principle that you've applied here in creating this plane?
Most of these, the panel will be familiar with an airplane flies.
Mm-hmm.
An airplane flies because the wing is curved that when they've always, since the right brothers pulled it down a runway to get it to fly.
How fast did the Wright brothers plane go, by the way?
Well, about 80 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
But aircraft today, to gain their top speeds, they must take off and land very fast. So they come down the runway very fast to get this air to move a little bit over the wing because the wing is shaped this way. The distance is greater than right straight through. Now, instead of doing that, I designed a wing and bent the wing up and made channels and moved the air through it. I bring the air through the channel instead of taking the airplane through the air. Just like this, when you move the air, you rise quickly. Now, why go down a runway 100 mile an hour when you can do this? Standing still, practically.
You use the curved surface.
I use the curved surface. I bent the wing up like a channel, like so, put the propeller in the back, and you start the propeller and you suck air through the channel 115 miles an hour, and in 75 feet, it's airborne. In fact, we land and take off crosswise the runways just for devilment.
Just for devilment.
And
Well, what were you gonna say?
Go ahead.
All right. No, you would. I found we have a little piece of motion picture film here, which will give you some idea of how this plane looks in action, just so you won't think we're kidding you here. And we'll take a look at the film right now. How fast are you going now when you take off on this?
Take it off at 20 miles an hour.
That's going to make a lot of people want to fly.
Oh, yes. We take a tremendous amount of inspiration for this because of so flight.
How high can it go?
All higher than the aircraft. Now, it's flying at 11 miles per hour there when it was hovering. And this comes in and lands at 20 miles an hour, depending on the atmospheric pressure. We have had a man run along beside this aircraft and hold to it while it's flying. It flies that slow.
That's it.
All right. So let me tell you a little bit more about the actual aircraft that's represented by this model. So the couple on the left is Jack Hines and his wife. This looks like their wedding day, Joan Deal. In 1953, Jack Hines was the head of the Heinz Food Company, which is headquartered in Pittsburgh, for which the ketchup is perhaps the best known product. But today it's a huge company. It owns Frito-Lay, etc. And Heinz, who was the CEO and president, I believe, at the time, was interested in flying and in aircraft. His wife, Joan Deal, was an aviatrix. And by virtue of his wealth and his open heart, generous heart, I should say, Jack Hines, it becomes quite a philanthropist. And one of the things that he does is he helps aviators when he sees a company that he thinks has promise. So he sees a demonstration of Willard's full-size channel wings vertical takeoff in Pittsburgh. That's the CCW2, which I don't have time for today. But seeing that, he becomes interested in helping the Custer Corporation financially. So what he does is he decides to give them a prototype that they can start working toward FAA certification. So on the right, you see the airplane that he selects as the basis for this model or this prototype. It's the Baumann Brigadier. And if you can see in this picture, it's a little hard, but the propeller is behind the wing. So that works well for a channel wing. And so Heinz approaches Baumann and asks if he could contract with him. He'll buy one of these, and will he put channels on it? And so they agree at a contract price, and Willard becomes the consultant to explain to him how to build the channels and put those on. And this is the finished product. After seeing the CCW1, this looks pretty cool. It's a nice looking airplane. The registration tail number you can see ends in 57 Charlie, so that becomes its name. It becomes the most famous of channel wings. If you see pictures of a channel wing, chances are it's going to be this one. This is probably a shot by Frank Kelly. And she also becomes Willard's workhorse over the course of his career. Her maiden flight is on July 13th, 1953, at Ventura County Airport in Oxnard, California. 4 days later, she took off in 90 feet, going 30 miles per hour, which was enough to get her in Time magazine. So for my contemporaries, you remember back when the two big magazines were Time and Life. And this airplane found its way into Time magazine that day. Now, let me tell you my favorite story about this airplane. There are lots of stories to tell, but my favorite one is entwined in the story of Walter Davidson. So Walt Davidson was from Pittsburgh, and he signed up when he saw the same demonstration that Hines had seen and got excited about. Davidson comes to Willard and says, if you need one, you got to test pilot. And so Willard hired him, and he picked up his family and he moved to Ventura, California, in order to be Willard's test pilot out there. And he was so excited about it that in 1953, while it was still undergoing its transformation, in January, Davidson signs up for a race, an air race, that is scheduled for later in October. It is an international air race that's going from London to Christchurch. So that is about 12,365 miles to fly from Heathrow, to New Zealand, and would mean probably an estimated 60 hours in flight time. Now, Davidson is like Willard, and that he thinks the best way to advertise is through headlines on newspapers. So he thinks it's a great idea to enter this aircraft into this international air race. So in January, while the plane is still in work, he signs up with the CCW-5. And everybody else, all the other entrants that have signed up, they list the crew members that are going to fly on the plane. But if you look at the Channel Wing entry, the only name there is Walt Davidson. It could be because, and I suspect, he thinks he might be able to do it by himself. And why does he think that? Well, in his early career during World War II, when World War II got started and the US had not yet joined, Canada had. And there were a lot of aviators, a lot of pilots that wanted to get involved. So they went off to Canada and joined the Air Force, the Royal Canadian Air Force. And Davidson ends up in Ferry Command, which its mission is to ferry American-made bombers purchased by the British and to fly them from Gander Air Force Base in Newfoundland to Prestwick in England. Because the German U-boats are too dangerous in the Atlantic, so they have to fly them. And the pilots in Ferry Command have to fly these brand new bombers 3,785 miles across the Atlantic at night under radio silence, navigating by the stars. The bombers are equipped with extra fuel tanks inside the fuselage because they're not made for 3,000-mile missions. So Davidson does this during the war, and it eventually expands, and pretty soon he's ferrying bombers all around the world. By the end of the war, he has flown a B-24 Liberator 11,000 miles from the US to Cairo via Brazil. So 11,000 miles he has under his belt. So when he's looking at a 12,000-mile course for this international air race, maybe that doesn't seem so bad. Unfortunately, we'll never know how he would have placed because the plane is ready in June. He starts testing. She has her, Davidson is the one that takes her on her maiden flight. But he ends up withdrawing from the race in about August because he discovers that the plane's engines are underperforming. They had requested more powerful engines, higher horsepower, and they were not available. Now, keep in mind that for the channel wing to perform at maximum capability, it's all in the propellers. They have to be able to spin very fast, move that air fast, and very efficiently. So when this propeller isn't up to snuff, Davidson withdraws from the race. However, that doesn't mean that he doesn't get into the newspapers. Less than a year later, he will end up in the newspapers because on August 24th, 1954 at Oxnard, he performs a demonstration of 57 Charlie that begins with a steep ascent, which is his the usual for him. The spectators down below at the airport are members of the press, members of the FAA, members of the military, and the director of the airport. So Walt takes her up. He levels off at about 2,500 feet. He then makes a wide arc and enters into a steep descent. He lines 57 Charlie up on the runway as if he's going to land, but he doesn't land. Instead, he levels out as he's floating above the runway. And then he brings the nose up to 22 degrees and simultaneously hits the throttle so that now he's pumping rivers of air through the channels. Because a conventional twin-engine airplane airspeed indicator does not show speeds below 40 miles per hour, and I have one pictured at the top there so that you can see, Davidson has instead installed a helicopter airspeed indicator inside the plane. So as he floats above the runway, he's looking at the helicopter indicator. It's registering 11 miles per hour, and then 0 miles per hour, and then back to 5, then down to 0, finally back to 11 miles per hour, because he's going into a headwind of 11 miles per hour, and that breeze is intermittently resisting the plane and holding it back. Now, as he's looking at the indicator, he can't believe his eyes, and he looks over the side down at the people on the ground, and they're waving and cheering. So he knows something really good is happening. The official airspeed that day was recorded as 11 miles per hour, and newspapers across the country publicized the airplane that could hover. So the irony, the great thing about the story, is that the pilot who wanted to introduce the channel wing to the world by winning an air race ends up putting the airplane in the headlines by flying slow. There was another demonstration later the next year by a firm called Ray and Ray, and they clocked 57 Charlie at 22 miles per hour, which they noted was more than 50 miles per hour slower than its calculated stall speed. So that's the significance of this little workhorse in one little story. I'm fast getting near the end here, but I can't leave without addressing the question that I always get when I talk about the channel wing. And that is, if it's so good, then why isn't it flying today? Whatever happened to it? The simple answer is that the FAA never granted the Custer Channel Wing Corporation a type certificate for the CCW5. Now, for a manufacturer to be able to produce an aircraft, that aircraft must have an FAA type certificate. You cannot reproduce it and sell it without. The FAA must review the results of a huge battery of aircraft tests and find them to be acceptable. You must have a manual written how to fly it, a maintenance manual, everything ready to hand to a pilot before you get your type certificate. 57 Charlie was the original prototype to begin that testing that began in 1953, had about 2 interruptions, and ended in 1970 for a variety of reasons, some of which are here. But out of frustration and out of a lack of money, when they realized, oh, it's going to take at least another $1 million to finish, they just had to throw in the towel. So it never did get that, and that's why you don't see it flying today. Now, I don't know if you docents have similar stories of the FAA stifling ingenuity. I've heard rumors that this is a common experience, but this is certainly what Willard's Corporation experienced. The other thing I would say, in answer to whatever happened to it, is that it's not over. It's still writing its history. Here on the left, you see that the UK Royal Navy is testing a UAV that employs small channel wings. On the right, in Paris, France, they're testing a water taxi, or we're back in 2017. So it works the same way in the water as it does in the air. you'll see here start as soon as I start these propellers under the water, the craft will come up higher on the surface, and that enables it then to travel through rivers that have more shallow areas. So people are still working on it. Here's until last Friday, this was my favorite shot. So this is the Albers Group presenting to the Air Force a proposal in 2022 to develop an 8 channel wing. So if you love 2, you gotta love 8, right? And you'll see that it's taking off from an aircraft carrier. But this doesn't need a slingshot to get it started, nor do you have to catch it with a net. So it's a good idea. But what really excited me was when I learned on Friday, and I have to show you the clip, and then I'll be done. Bye. Now, there's no sound to this. What's great, I think, about the cyclone video is that the channel wing was born in a thunderstorm. And it's nice that even today, when they show it flying, it's flying through a thunderstorm. It's great. But anyway, this is the website. If you go check it out, Channel Wing Propulsion System. And I just find it very exciting. I wish I had several $1 million to invest in it. So we don't have that at the Smithsonian. These are the 2, just to wrap up. And I want to thank you all again so much for your kind attention, for your letting me come and talk a little bit about the channel wing. And note the website there. I've been maintaining that for a number of years. And I'll turn it back over to Paul if you have any questions or anything to follow up.
That was excellent, Joel. Thank you very much. It's wonderful that you're personally engaged in keeping the story alive. It truly is an interesting story to tell. A couple people put news feeds of the channel wing cyclone that you put in there. We know where the display case is because it looks like it's off the left wing of the Junkers 52. So we'll be able to find it. I'll be there tomorrow and we'll check it out.
Sure.
There were some comments about watching the video of it taking off, and then it was sort of the wow comment, 50 feet and 50 things. Scott put in the link to Amazon Books if you're interested in buying the books. The story is not easily told in a 1-hour presentation. It was very complex, but he was an amazing man for all the things he did. Joe Ramita wants to know if you can tell us where that secret airfield was, where they did the testing during World War II.
Sure. And before I forget, let me put in a thank you to Steve Solterbeck, who donated a copy of my book to the Hazy Docent Library. So there's a copy there as well.
Perfect.
The airfield is it's not at the college. Come on. University of Maryland has a little airfield there where there is a museum. It's not that.
Sure.
It's nearby. And I was trying to think of, let me get it. I got my book right here.
University of Maryland.
Well, it was nearby. There's a website on airfields in Maryland, which is where I found out about it.
Is it one of those ones that shows you all the airfields that closed in the past?
Yes.
Okay.
Um, hang on.
Les Taylor thinks, was it
Sure,
Ike
Beltsville.
Urco?
It was.
Say again, Joel.
It's in Beltsville,
Beltsville. Okay. All right.
and I
Thank you.
believe it's still there.
Okay. Bill Penny says FA category of powered lift pioneered by Custer is in the news today with forthcoming eVTOLs. We saw pictures of that.
Yeah.
Bud said, why couldn't get certified? And we went over that. It's more complex than Joel could put on one slide. So
Yeah.
I recommend you check the book out of the library or buy it on Amazon and get the whole story. Les Taylor wants to know if you know the name of the UK UAV and whether it's actually in flight status.
I do not know what its current status is. I could find the name. It's probably on my website. Well, let me see if I can find it real quick.
We'll just send everybody to your website. How that CusterChannelWing.net.
Yeah.
All one
And
word.
and go to the fun facts page. And
Okay.
you'll see.
Bill Strandberg wants to know drag characteristics of the wing with larger area in the nacelles to generate lift. Would the drag be higher?
So from what I've read, again, I'm not an engineer. From what I've read, the drag is higher. Even when you generate a lot of lift, you get drag. So that and the second CCW5, they actually slimmed down on the the channels themselves and where they joined to the fuselage. And so and that was in an attempt to cut down on drag also. Yeah, and that was one of the criticisms that I remember reading, that it's going to have more drag. So it's trade-off. In my mind, we're always trying to build the perfect aircraft that does everything perfectly, the one aircraft that does everything perfectly. And it doesn't exist. You have to, depending on the mission and what you want it to do, I think you have to make trade-offs.
Yeah, the one aircraft, Joel, you might mention the lawsuit your grandfather took out against the A-10
Yes,
using his patent.
yes. So I did not include that in my book because it didn't advance the story any. And also, there was a lot of hard feelings left in Hagerstown, which was a big Fairchild town. And Fairchild was part of the companies named in the lawsuit. So, and I don't want to fan those flames. But so with the Warthog, the idea was that the jet engines themselves, I believe, are mounted to the fuselage and they're right behind the wing. And Willard's point was that that placement allowed them to draw air over the wing in a way that he had patented. And so they weren't paying him any money for using that idea. And so that's why he sued them. When it went, I don't think it ever went to court. I think it got thrown out before then. But I did notice that the Air Force had mentioned in their response that they did notice that there was considerably more lift created by that configuration. And so they took measures to cut down on that lift. um, anyway, it was thrown out because I think most, if not all, of the patents were expired by then. So there was nothing in effect. And also, the judge pointed out that it was not a curved wing. And Willard had gotten his patent on that curved wing and not on drawing air over a wing. So it did not apply.
Okay, Dave Waltrip mentions that turboprop power probably make this concept fairly high performance compared to the kind of engines that Willard had to use.
Yes.
And then we'll close with if you want to go see the last existing model, 57 Charlie was disassembled. There is one up at the Mid-Atlantic Air Museum in Reading, Pennsylvania. You can see it sitting outside there if you go toward the museum. Bill asked if they are going to restore it, and Bill, we were chatted before we started the video. The answer is yes, like anything in a museum, all in good time.
That's right.
Joel, thank you very much. This was fascinating. I hope everybody checks out or buys
You're
the book.
welcome.
It was a story I was not very fondly aware of, and I really appreciate the time and what you've done to keep the legacy alive.
All right. Thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity. It's been great.
For docents, in 2 weeks, we're going to have Curator Tom Payon talking about the Norge airship. And for docents, we have a docent council meeting tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. Everyone's invited. The link is in the flyby. So, Joel, thank you. Appreciate it. Come down to the museum sometime. We'll give you a tour.
For sure. I'll hold you to that.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye now.
Have a good day.